Well, here we are, the final decade of Warped. In the first two episodes of this series, we uncovered the lows and highs of Warped Tour's development. We charted its rise from festival circuit outsider to undisputed heavyweight champ of the summer. We looked at what made this tour such a cultural icon, such an absolute game changer for punk and skate culture, and for the whole idea of what a music festival could be. And we looked at the darker stuff, the times when things just didn't quite go as planned, the times when it felt like the Warped Tour was going to fall apart right before our eyes. If you've not watched those already, go check them out now. And if you have, then let's get into part 3. Let's just say the highs weren't quite so high with this one. And the lows? Well, they're a whole lot lower. This is how the Warped Tour fell apart, and what killed it. Thanks for joining me. Bought any cool CDs recently? Read any sick zines? No, of course not, Grandpa. Isn't it time for your nap? To say that streaming and social media turned the music industry on its head is an understatement. It blew the whole thing apart. On one hand, it was really cool. 4 dudes from Homer, Nebraska could release their basement-recorded EP on Bandcamp, connect with fans on YouTube, and set up a coast-to-coast tour on Facebook. On the other hand, it sucked. Streaming services paid artists a pittance. Mom-and-pop record shops went out of business. And we all forgot the simple joy of actually holding a new record in our hands. Okay, you can still buy vinyl, but even so, you can't deny the digital revolution changed everything. And this meant everyone in the industry had to adapt. And I mean everyone. The Warped Tour, too. Up until the mid-2000s, the tour had been riding high, financially at least. It was making money like it was going out of style, and had established itself as one of the events of the summer. But in doing so, it risked alienating its core fanbase. The expanded lineup and increasingly diverse style had left some complaining that Warped was now just like every other festival out there. It had lost what made it unique. So when founder Kevin Lyman and his team found themselves having to adapt once again, it didn't go down too well. The 2008 tour saw the likes of 303, Does It Offend You? Yeah, and even Katy Perry added to the lineup. Again, this was expansion rather than replacement. This was still at its heart a punk festival, and there were punk bands everywhere, but the presence of increasingly divisive artists was hard for some to stomach. Nothing can stay the same. Everything has to change and evolve. But some of the core identity must remain. Increasingly for the Warped Tour, it seemed like this core identity was fading away. The Warped Tour was never really about the money. Just look at those early years if you don't believe me. The festival was flat broke and the whole thing was falling apart. It was messy, it was chaotic, it was beautiful. But the sad truth is that money does make the world go round. And without huge ticket sales, a tour like this just isn't sustainable. By 2011, this was the reality of the situation facing Warped. For the mainstream audiences, the ramshackle nature of the tour had lost its shine. Coachella and Lollapalooza were back at the top of the pile, packed with the trendiest bands of the day, and plenty of Instagrammable moments. For the punks and skaters, that shine had been lost long ago. Warped had become a weak nostalgia trip, a pale imitation of what it had been just a few years before. Festival founder Kevin Lyman did adapt for a digital age. He had to. He wasn't an idiot. He knew that the only way to keep the tour alive was to make a grab for mainstream acceptance, while trying to balance the interests of long-term fans. The gamble paid off, but only temporarily. In the end, he couldn't keep hold of either demographic, and the festival found itself struggling for money once again. As sponsors pulled out of the ailing tour one by one, financial trouble started to stack up. This might have sounded the death knell for the festival, but as it turned out, the killing blow would be dealt by something much darker. Before it even began, the atmosphere around the 2015 tour was toxic, to say the least. First up, Austin Jones was booked for the tour. The singer and YouTuber was the subject of a bunch of different accusations from fans regarding sexual grooming and soliciting nude images. Some of these fans were only 14 years old. Jones was kicked off the tour, but no further action was taken. Some believe the tour's organizers should have gone further, ensuring Jones was prosecuted. In the end, Jones was not arrested until 2017, and court documents show he was still harassing underage girls a year after his ejection from the Warped Tour. Next, Jake McElfrish's solo project, Front Porch Step, was booked to play in Nashville. McElfrish was at the center of a sexual misconduct scandal himself, after allegedly sending nude photos to underage fans. No charges were brought against McElfrish, though the singer admitted engaging in sexual correspondence with female fans, some of whom were underage. Kevin Lyman then spoke with McElfreish's counselor and decided to let Front Porch Step play a single, unpaid date of the tour as part of the musician's rehabilitation. Basically, no one agreed with this decision. The Wonder Years and Senses Fail were some of the most unspoken critics, imploring fans to boycott McElfreish's set. But Lyman stood by his call. If he were a danger to anyone, Lyman said, he simply would not have been here. And that wasn't the end of it. Midway through the tour, the band Slaves were kicked off the bill after frontman Johnny Craig allegedly harassed and assaulted a woman working at a merch stand. The list of incidents and controversies was now spiraling out of control. These allegations and actions may be disturbing, but surely the Warped Tour isn't responsible for the ethics and character of the acts it puts on. These are grown men we're talking about, and they've got to be accountable for their own actions. Well, that may be so, but all this does feed into the uneasy and unpleasant atmosphere that grew up around Warped in that final stretch. In recent years, more women have come forward, sharing their stories of what they experienced in the latter era of the tour. In 2023, WVAU published an unnerving account from a woman who said the singer of one of her favorite pop-punk bands harassed her for years on social media after she met him on the tour aged 15. In 2024, accusations surfaced from former tour employees describing terrible encounters they'd witnessed between some performers and female fans. This was the dark cloud of sexual predation and misogyny that hung over Warped as it limped towards its final years. And so, on the 2017 tour, when Dickies frontman Leonard Graves Phillips lost his shit at a female audience member, making a bunch of sexual references and calling her an effing hog and a fat C-word, there was a depressing feeling of inevitability about it. Lyman released a statement condemning Phillips' actions. He reiterated that Warped Tour is supposed to be an inclusive space, safe for all. He kicked Dickies off the tour. He did all the right things and stood up for female fans at Warped. But there was still a realization in the air. A realization that the party was over. A realization that the togetherness, the shared cultural experience, the fun, was gone. And if that was gone, then what was even the point? Few people were surprised when, in November 2017, Kevin Lyman announced that 2018's tour would be the last. It was an emotional affair. Bands like Simple Plan, NoFX, and Less Than Jake laid down standout sets for the audience, creating a visceral shared moment for all involved. There had been dark times. The actions of a minority of individuals had ruined something incredibly special. But on this final set of tour dates, bands and fans alike were here to remember the good times. They were ready to get back to the roots of what the festival was supposed to be about in the first place. As the last show of the tour came to a close, Lyman took to the stage to speak with audiences one last time. He thanked the fans, he thanked the artists, he thanked everyone who helped turn the Warped Tour into such a positive force for punk and skate culture.
I know some people hate me for not being as punk rock as I was, but in my heart and soul, it's all punk rock. Bands sing the same way to those kids that these bands sing to you. So follow out, and this next song is super cool right now, because I'm so pissed off at authority. Let's hear it, Fletcher.
And with that, the Warped Tour was done. A clutch of live shows in 2019 celebrated the tour's quarter century, albeit a year early, but it wasn't a tour. The roller coaster of soaring highs and crushing lows was over, forever. The story of the Warped Tour is a bittersweet one. There are great times to remember. Times when punk and skate culture rose from relative obscurity and showed the world what it was all about. Times when it felt like nothing could touch the Warped Tour. Chaotic summers when scene stalwarts and up-and-comers shared stages across the country, across the world. Times when kids formed awesome memories with their best friends. Memories they still talk about to this day, even now, and the fire of youth has long since faded. And there were dark times too. Seriously dark times. The Warped Tour is not to blame for the sexual abuse and exploitation perpetrated by a small minority of its artists. The tour was always supposed to be a place where anyone and everyone could feel safe, positive, and among friends. A small number of people just didn't get on board with that vibe. But what sadly is true is that, for a while at least, the tour did become a place where some individuals felt like they could abuse their fame, exploit their fans, and just be generally shitty. For all the controversy about diverse lineups, for all the accusations of selling out and commercialization, it was those individuals who brought down the Warped Tour. It's those individuals who have tarnished the legacy of one of the pivotal cultural phenomena of recent decades. 2025 marks the 30th anniversary of the Warped Tour. It seems like the festival is going to be revived, with 3 dates planned in DC, California, and Florida. Whether this is the beginning of a new era, or just a one-off return for nostalgia's sake, it largely doesn't matter. What does matter is this. For a couple of days next year, we'll have the chance to party like it's 1995, all over again. Thanks for sticking with me across this series. The story of the Warped Tour is a complicated one, and the final chapter sank to some pretty dark depths. I'm just grateful we got to the end of the video on a high. For more deep dives into punk culture, stay right here for another video coming right up. And don't forget to like and subscribe for even more of the good stuff.